Welcome to the Men's Lifeline Academy podcast, where we bring on stellar men who are scholars, men who are working every single day to better themselves, their family, their friends, community, because we're all about being scholars, learning from life, seeing where life's going to take us. And I'll be there with your journey. My name is Zach Goodman. I'll be the host. And today I got Paul. We got Paul, who is a poet, who's going to help you find your talents, to reframe it. And he's got a stellar story of being a family man and a man of faith. Paul, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Zach. I'm honored to be here. Glad to get to have a conversation with you. And it's going to be fun.
Awesome. So on this podcast, we really focus on helping men kind of like share their story. So kind of in about a couple of minutes, tell us who you are, Paul. Like, who is Paul?
So Paul in the third person, is a poet. So I write poetry. I work in higher education ministry in a ministry school, sitting with several teams there from accreditation and a couple other teams, helping with different projects and strategy with those. I am focused on writing. So I do a lot of writing. And Zach, you mentioned, reframing talents. And that's something I have a lot of experience in, from working in higher education and in actually volunteering before that in ministry, and then helping lead a adult leadership program. So a whole lot of team building. And I realized that when you're building teams, like a lot of times what stuff that you want to look for is people like something they're good at that can be transferable to something else, right? And so for myself, if I love writing poetry and I'm good at poetry and that kind of creative sense of stuff, but I've built a reputation over time for being very good at analytical thinking and systems. And it hit me one day. I was like, well, man, poem is a system. Like you've got a structure to it. Maybe you have a rhyme scheme. You have this system going, but it flows well. It feels really good. And so I'm taking my poetry talent and I'm using that in the workplace, in what people typically think of as left brain. And it's like, well, if I can do that for myself and I have experience in, building teams and helping other people use their talents and make the most of it, then why not explore that and build that out further and help other people with the same thing, right? And so I think a lot of us, we sometimes people, they feel stuck where they are. They know they might be good at something. I can do this really good, but I don't know how that applies to anything else, right? I'm like, well, you can take that and apply it everywhere else. I'll give you a real quick example. I don't know if I'm going too long or not.
No, go for it. This is all about you, my friend.
Cool. So here, this is something I used to teach people when they were, training for ministry, like in a church, right? So if you want practice, let's say you want practice speaking in front of people or in your stage presence, right? And how you hold yourself up. Some people aren't necessarily going to get an opportunity to go be on a stage right away. You can do some things. You could actually do a podcast. That's going to give you a great training, right? But what else can you do, right? So if you're volunteering, you can go be a greeter at a door, greeting people in. That's very basic, right? And you're like, well, how does that help? Because you're making yourself approachable. Like that door is your stage, right? And so you're finding a way to build a talent that you wouldn't get to otherwise. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to be able to help other people with, is seeing like, hey, here's something you're really good at, and here's how you can take that and use it to add value somewhere else. And also here's how you can do something that seems like it's not at all connected and use that to hone your talents and for the things that you want to do.
And how long have you been doing that? How long have you been helping people like discover their talents and then apply it to different areas of their life?
I, without realizing that's what I was doing, like without thinking that's what I'm doing, close to 2026, about 15 years. I mean, I've done that since I was in college and helping lead a college ministry, like the volunteer teams and stuff like that. Like I've just naturally done that in building teams. And probably about the last 5 years, it kind of hit me of what I was actually doing. is I like to ask myself questions, right? So if I'm good at poetry, why am I? If I love poetry and I'm good at it, why am I so good at analytical stuff? Why another thing that's always been easy for me is team building, even when it didn't make sense, right? So you look at different people and be like, man, that dude's charismatic, that dude's this, that dude's that, and myself, everyone's on a journey, right? You start somewhere, and you could say I was building successful teams before I really, like, any normal average person seeing that be like, how's he doing that? And so I started asking myself that question: well, how am I doing this? And part of it was the relational connection. Like, if you believe in someone, I believe that covers a lot of weaknesses. So like, I know that person believes in me, so even though they might have this or that weakness, I'm going to follow them. But also being able to pick out, like, all right, here's a talent, here's a different way that talent can be used. Kind of recognizing innate motivation in someone that's transferable to different talents, and how really just giving people opportunity to do what they're wired to do, in a way they might not have seen before.
That's a beautiful skill to have, is to one, even put belief into somebody, and then two, help people find out their skills.
Yeah, it's man, it's fun. I love it. I don't even I love it.
I can definitely tell just by that smile you got on your face, just thinking of how you can kind of help somebody to rediscover, especially we can take such a creative art form like poetry. So what kind of, I guess that's my first question too, is what kind of poetry do you like? Do you like writing like haikus, a little bit of everything?
I have a little bit of every. My favorite is blank verse, and so what that means is you have a structure and a system. You could say a structure to it, but there's no set rhyme scheme. So blank verse is structure, no rhyme scheme. Free verse would be no structure, no, just you hope it flows well. You need to be really talented, really good at feel and flow to make free verse work well. And then of course you have formal poetry, which is, I'm going to write a sonnet, I've got a rhyme scheme, I've got all this and that. So I think that's my favorite type of poetry, and it kind of blends. You have a lot of freedom to do what you want to do, but you also have an underlying structure. You might not see it, other people might not see it, but it's there.
That's fascinating. I never heard of one that is more free flowing. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you look at different artists and things, how they just kind of flow and go. So how long have you been writing poetry for?
Since I was something I've recognized I've loved it since I was a sophomore in college.
Okay.
I had written like a poem or two before that for like schoolwork, and I remember being in college thinking, I think I want to try writing a poem. I just want to see it, and I did it, and I was like, I love this. This is like my favorite thing ever. I want to keep doing this, and ended up majoring in English because of that. Thought I would go teach English. That did not happen. Took poetry writing classes in college, and man, I love it. It is, yeah, it's just, I love it.
So are you able to take like any of those form of poetry and like just the way the structure is, and like how do you work with someone like you might be kind of helping discover their talent, like poetry, realizing there's more analytics that's in it, like
So I think the poetry, if you're talking poetry with someone, a lot of people there's no, like, they don't have a connection to it. They have like this preconception of what it is. A lot of that is negative because of just really bad poetry that's been promoted, in different realms. So poetry's not something I can always use to connect with people. I do want my poetry to be accessible to people, right? So it's something that if someone's not familiar with, or they're not really into poetry, I would love to think that if they read mine, they would at least enjoy some of it. But it's not a huge connection point on a deeper level. I do use it as an example of like, hey, here's something I do and I love that's creative. And, while, and I can take those abilities and those talents and use them somewhere else. And I also use it as an example of, when I write, for example, Zach, you've talked about how you're, you do therapy, stuff like that, right? And so for me, if I write a poem, I am healthier mentally, emotionally, even physically in a way, because I feel better mentally and emotionally, and so it's like easier, like it gives me energy, right? So um, it it's just, and that's part of it's because you're doing something you love. Part of it is how, you're processing, information, ideas, you're thinking, and it's even like an emotionally. It's like it ties all these things together, um, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to articulate and use it. So here's an example of what I mean by this. So I help lead a creative writing small group with college students, and some people in it, they love poetry. Some people they don't. What a lot of college students struggle with is how to like put an idea and show the idea in the story. So they're not just telling it, they're showing it. And one of my encouragements, my feedback to them will be like, hey, why don't you take this idea, you try to write a poem about it. The point of the exercise is not to have a good poem. It may or may not be good. The point is, like, if you go through that, it's going to force you to kind of start like spilling out this intangible aspects about it. And then once you do that, and so you've refined that thinking and that emotional thinking kind of together, you've refined it in the poem, then you have this better grasp on what you're trying to communicate, the concept, the feel, and the concreteness of the concept, and you can go back and write in the story. So that, I think that's applicable to life too. But that's a long-winded answer to, I think, to your question.
No, that's a great answer, though.
Yeah.
It's about learning how to think and how to tell a story and not just put something on paper and make it
Yeah.
sound good. It's about how to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's poetry. My personal philosophy on poetry is that that God has set eternity in the hearts of men, and a poem in its attempt to reach it. And I think that's because it tries to reach towards this deeper meaning, this deeper something that's there. Like I don't know of any good poem that doesn't do that on some level. Like there's always something. That's why a double, triple entendres are some of my favorite techniques in poems, because you're layering the meaning in there. And I think that's life, right? If you have something that you're doing, something that you want to do, there's usually layers to it. There's,
Mhm.
an emotion layer, mental layer, different motivation layers. So it's a reflection of humanity.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever heard someone say that with poetry. I can understand getting the emotion released out of it because you're pouring a lot of your ideas out. I don't think I've really heard people describe the physical part of it, though. That's what really has me kind of curious because you mentioned there's also that physical release.
Yeah, well, it gives me energy anyway. So if you do something you love, it's going to give you energy. And I think if it energizes you, it makes it like you feel better, and so that ties into the physical. I write better poetry on days that I've worked out, or the day if I worked out the day before, right? And I work out better when I've written poetry, right? So it's a whatever that kind of relationship is, where they affect each
Now
other.
it sounds like a symbolic relationship where you have two
Symbolic.
things
There we go.
working together. No, that's awesome. I think that's really incredible how you recognize just how much things when they can two opposing opposites can both be true and somehow find a way to connect to one another.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Now, do you
think
have
there's
any published works at all with your poetry?
I have some I publish some my poetry right now on Substack. I have a little bit published in Auburn University's literary journal for their students and all that, from when I submitted to it back when I was a college student. And since then, I have not submitted to journals. I think I am I like the self-publishing kind of deal, and Substack, and I have it's a slow work in progress of a poetry book, a unique poetry book that's a eventually I'm going to publish. It's a work in progress, but I don't a lot of journals. I don't know. I've never been a big like, oh, I'm going to submit stuff to journals. A lot of the journals I don't want to be associated with, even if they're big, just because like the garbage they publish. I don't want my stuff next to that. There's some smaller ones that are excellent, that if I cared enough about that, I think submitting it to them would be good. But yeah, I put it on my Substack, and you know share it with people. I think it adds value to people. It's my sharing my poetry for me, like, I view it as something like if you wanna view it like, publishing has a lot of different, motivations, right? So some people publish because they want to build their brand, their company, a business. From the poetry part of what I do, I really believe that's just like I wanna add value to people with it. I want people to enjoy it, and eventually I will self-publish a poetry book that I'm working on. I put it on Substack, but I don't. It's not whether or not I'm in a journal doesn't really like that's never been a motivation for me. Like I've had people tell me you should do that. You should submit to it, and I'm like, maybe I will. We'll see. It's just not. It's not a. It's not a big priority for me.
And it doesn't have to be. I mean, if you want to do more of the self-publishing, if that's where you find more of yourself more aligned, that way it's more about, your kind of collection together. I mean, that's all what it's all about, is doing what and having a reason for it. I think that's the most important part, is being confident and having a reason if you want to do something or not do something. And if someone asks you a question about why, to make sure, one, that you have a reason for it.
Yeah,
Like I
that's
said,
true.
I don't want to be associated with some journals, and that's okay. It's your piece of work. If you want to submit it, fantastic. If not, that's up to you, especially if you're working on some Substack, especially if you're working on your own book, which is Substack would definitely be in the comments below. So you definitely, if you're into poetry, you gotta go check it out.
Yeah, it's creativity and culture. So it's poetry and personal innovation. Poetry is the creative side of it. Culture is everything else. So right now that's personal innovation. So that's personal innovation is how I frame taking a talent and using it in a new way. That's what innovation is. It's
Hmm.
it's taking something that's existing, using it in a novel way. The one word definition of what I would call innovation or personal innovation would be impact, because you're doing something a new way and it makes impact, right? And so, way I phrase it is if you're gonna have like innovate yourself and what you do, then there's an opportunity to do that. So you start there, opportunity, and then the end result is the impact. So it takes you opportunity to impact. And that's that stuff I'm still building out. On there, the poetry, that comes easy. I write a poem, share a little bit about some inspiration behind it, some insights on it, publish it, and I think that those are fun. Those are great. If you love poetry, or if you just curious about it, check it out. That's creativityandculture.com. It's on Substack.
Again, it'll be in the comments below, because we like to support people who take their time to come on this podcast. We always like to support them in their creative adventures, especially where I don't think to my recollection, I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, someone let me know. I don't think we've ever had a poet come on this podcast before.
Well, I'm honored. There's,
There
I
might
think
have
more
at least been
people,
one poet, but they didn't describe poetry. I can tell you that they didn't describe poetry
they
on this
might be a little
podcast.
embarrassed to share the poetry. Some people feel that way. But yeah.
Well, I think that's what's so cool. It's like everyone has a different, unique, and challenge. I mean, sometimes we bring on people who are into finances, sometimes who are into different athletics and things like that. And so it's always nice to broaden the worldview of bringing someone who's a poet, especially with how much excitement you get talking about poetry and everything. And, something that you discovered since your sophomore year of college, and just continue to improve upon it, especially when you think about writing a book and you're thinking about if you've already started it and you're just finding ways to connect with other people and using all the skills that you've been given, both on, the logic side, so the brain, and the creative side, the right brain, just bringing that together. And I love the way that you said impact, because on this channel, we're huge on impacting
Come
people.
on.
We're huge on letting people know that if you can help one person, you're doing well. That with impact, it's having someone to believe in you who didn't believe in you before. And it seems like you're just a pro at that. I've always just had that natural gift to encourage people, help people, versus change, which is more so expecting people to all of a sudden do a skill
Yeah.
without, you know, really just for change, it's just expecting people all of a sudden to start living a completely different way versus gradual.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people describe change, it's like they want it instant.
Yeah, it's instant is imaginary. The everything has a process. You can't the believing thing. I am big on that. That was something, even growing up. It's and I have my whole life story of. That's the other part of me. I didn't introduce on introducing myself is I'm married. I have 3 kids now. Incredibly blessed there. Growing up, dysfunctional family. Ended up living at a Big Oak Boys Ranch, which is a children's home in high school. So it's just a very, very different life growing up. And one of the things that was like this common theme was, people wouldn't believe me, right? And I translated that internally as people don't believe in me. And so now, like as a father, one of the biggest things that I want to instill in my children is not just that I love you, but it's I believe in you. I think that's one of the most important phrases you can tell someone, because that helps build confidence. It helps add value. You can love someone and not believe in them, right?
Right.
And I think I've experienced that, and that doesn't really make you feel great. It's like, oh well, they at least they love me, But it's having that confidence of like, man, they believe in me. That's a gift that you can really give people.
So have you noticed a change in your children compared to how you were raised, with actually working to be more intentional about instilling belief in them that they can
My
achieve what they
my
want to achieve?
kids, yeah, my kids have no concept of what the kind of life I had growing up. Just none. They are happy. They love playing together. I mean, they're human. They're human. They're kids. Sometimes they fuss, but they generally speaking, 90% of the time love playing together. They're 7. Well, about to be 7. They're 6, 3, and 1. That's their ages.
Oh,
2
wow.
girls and a boy. The boy's the youngest. Um, and a lot of this credit's also to my wife, right? It takes 2. And they, man, they are so full of life, so full of just happiness and joy. And you know, one of the things that we do every so often at dinner time is, well, everybody will share their favorite thing for the day. And yesterday, our middle child, uh, Cora, she said, my favorite thing is it was being home or coming home today, because we went to church and to to um to my in-laws' house for a little bit. I helped put up some Christmas stuff. But her favorite thing was being at home. And that doesn't happen just for the sake of being home. That's because of what being home means. Like being home with your family, being home with mommy and daddy, older sister, younger brother, the peace in the environment. So the environment itself, like what, for her to say that, that's a reflection of her entire experience. And that is just light years different from what I had growing up.
Oh, so what was the deciding factor that you didn't want to live in how you grew up? What was that deciding factor that
Uh, Man, really, it's uh, I think it's 3 things. 1, Jesus, um, giving my life to Christ and knowing that life needed to be better. 2, when I went to live at the boys' ranch, I saw what life could be like, and I had no, like before that, I thought my family life was pretty normal, right? It was just, you know, that's all I knew. I had no idea what I was missing until I went there and I saw what it looked like for like healthy marriage between my house parents, and what a structured environment looked like. Like, hey, let's do chores and like self respect and take care of yourself and the stuff around you. So being in that environment, and then later, um, with my adoptive family, is what I call them, when they took me in after the ranch, um, just the lovingness and the, hey, we're here for you. Like I didn't have those things growing up. So seeing that and seeing what that was like, that was a big factor. And then there was this moment in college when I was just in my apartment and kind of self-reflecting, and I remember thinking, man, I'm just tired of I used to be a very negative person. Like it's just super super negative. I mean, you grow up in a negative environment. And I remember thinking like, man, I'm really tired of being negative. I want to be positive. And it wasn't just this thought, it was like this switch flipped inside of me of I am going to be an encouraging person if my life depends on it. Like I will do everything I can. And from that moment forward, it's not like I was super duper encouraging guy all the time, but it was like a night and day difference for me. And then it was a process after that of becoming more and more of an encouraging, positive person, right? And so that moment though, when that switch flipped, it was like this decision. I made this internal decision. That jump started the process. I think earlier we talked about, how things are a gradual process, and that is true. But to get on the gradual process, there has to be that switch flip moment where you're like, I want that. It's not even I want. It's a I decide. I think, like you're choosing that, and then you grow from there.
Yeah, definitely. Now, were you like seeing someone that was like positive and like looked like they were having a good life, or when you're
Um,
sitting in an apartment
you
trying to make
know,
that
I
decision?
I was just I don't even know. It's like just by myself. I wasn't even doing anything in the moment. I think I was just kind of sitting there thinking, and I don't know why it came to mind. I could say that the Holy Spirit prompted it. I did have friends I had made in college at church who had wonderful families and were encouraging. So I think a lot of that helped their influence. But really, man, it almost it's one of those moments where I look back and I'm like, why did I think like it's like the thought itself came out of the blue, and it was just maybe it was something that had been brewing the whole time. I personally do believe the Holy Spirit's hand was involved with it. How that works, it could have been a prompting right then. It could have been a slow process behind the scenes that I was not aware of, and then it came to the surface. Whatever the case is, um, it was at bare minimum the influences on my life before that moment did play into that, and I think that's how seeds. If a seed gets planted, you don't see it. You might not even know it's there. You're not thinking about it, but it's getting watered over time. So if people are influencing you, or they're watering the seed, and God may be the one making the seed grow, or is the one making the seed grow, and then one day it sprouts up, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? And it's been a work in progress the whole time behind the scenes.
Well, it's impressive that you made that decision and worked, I'm sure, relentlessly hard on it to be that positive person versus going from negative to positive. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier about impact. It's not going from this completely negative person to this completely positive person, but that gradual process of transforming into, let's say, instead of having 10,000 negative thoughts, maybe 9,999.
Yeah. No, it's a process. When I was thinking is a big part of it. It's also the words you choose to say. So like even if you have a negative thought, you don't have to say it, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's something I still have to work on. Like if I think something negative, like do I need to say it? Is it really going to actually help anyone if I do that? Um, and I think that's a big part of that process. If you want to be a positive, life-giving person, it's your thinking, and part of how you get that under control. It's all the things, what you consume, it's writing, stuff like that can help you process it, but it's also what you say. Like, 'cause if you speak it, then you've taken that thought and you've put more power to it and you process it for more further. And then when you speak it, you're hearing it yourself. So it's like this feedback loop of now not only are you producing a negative thought, but you're ingesting your own negativity, right? And so that kind of snowballs. But likewise, if you start speaking positive, even if you don't feel it, even if you don't think it, you're creating this feedback loop of more positive influence just from your own words. So the Bible, there's a Proverbs says, words have the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. I think that's how it goes, the second half. But it's true. Like I think you're familiar with the self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yes.
Like so if you're speaking negative stuff all the time, what's going to happen? It's probably you're going to set yourself up for a negative outcome. You're going to act on some negative belief. But if you're speaking,
they're gonna say, "See, I told you it was not gonna rain. I told you."
yeah, that's right, because it's always, yeah, and like, but it works for. I was thinking about this the other day. Everyone, whenever I've heard self-fulfilling prophecy, people always talk about it in the negative sense. I'm like, well, what about the positive sense, right? Like, there's a positive sense to it too. And I don't mean be silly, you know, I'm gonna just speak everything to existence kind of stuff. Like, not that kind of silliness,
Right, not
but
necessarily the manifestation part of it.
yeah, not manifestation, but there is. I think there is a lot of even if you use affirmations, there's benefit in that, because you're reinforcing your confidence, your mindset, and then you're going to take action and make decisions based on what you believe.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious now because I know sometimes, not all the time, I know sometimes with poetry, sometimes it comes from a lot of people who went through a lot of struggles in their life.
Yeah.
Did you see your poetry transform at all from like maybe like a little bit on the, for lack of a better words, darker side to a little bit more like the lighter side, from like a little bit more like
I think there's
gloomy
a
to
little
like a
bit.
little bit more light? Or again, I don't know how you write, so
There's a little bit of that.
okay.
I think in some of my earlier stuff, some of it's more reflection of maturity.
Okay.
There,
That's
there's a there's a lot of the human experience. Like, we all have pain. We all have things we go through,
Mhm.
and I don't want to shy away from that in what I write.
Right.
So sometimes I might focus on something more of like an image of something, or an idea or concept, or an emotion, and it's not really a negative, or it's just something that's there. But the negative stuff, you can always, I think art is a great place to lean into that and to process it.
Mhm.
I'm going to use the Bible again because it's a perfect example. So Psalms, all the Psalms are poems, and if you read through the Psalms, like, there's some pretty negative stuff in there, right? People are going through it, but at the end of the day, they all point to, like, hey, there's still hope. There's a higher outcome. Like, even if this happened, like, there's a bigger picture, right? And so even if you're writing a poem about pain or loss or death or heartbreak, or um hope deferred, or guilt, or condemnation, whatever it is, I think you can still frame it in a way that makes people consider it. Even if it doesn't, like, directly point to hope, it can
Mhm.
still get people, like, considering that, and like thinking about it. So it's how you frame it. Um, but you can talk about negative stuff, capture the emotion of, like, a matter, anger, sadness, loneliness. You can capture these what people might think of as negative, and you can still put it in a poem that people enjoy reading, and it doesn't leave them feeling like, man, I feel awful. Like, that's the worst thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
you can still do that. Um, it might leave a longing, but then that goes back to my philosophy of God set eternity in the hearts of men in a poem is an attempt to reach it. And I think leaving that longing there can sometimes be okay, because people, when they come to terms with that, then they're like, well, what am I missing? They start asking those questions, and um, they go from there.
yeah, well, poetry is one of those things that's very interesting, that how much depth and how much pain, especially when you look into the artist who wrote the poem and how much they had to struggle and how much they still try to process information and try to look at things from the perspective that they're going through right there and there.
Yeah.
So I think it's, as long as you have a creative outlet, I think that's what helps you process life. Like you just said, life is full of pain and suffering. There's no way around it.
No, it's it's
I mean,
it's it's
everyone
going to come
gets
at you.
few scars, bruises, and pains. I mean, there's no way around it. So it's like learning to be realistic about the challenges of life and knowing that there's always some form of belief that can be in it, especially if you can pour that. And there's some people who can just like words on paper you can just read the emotion behind it and the optimism.
Yeah.
Can't think of any examples. I mean, I know you're the poor guy. I know a few,
Um,
but not too many. I know a few
my
poets.
my favorite would be The Ovenbird by Robert Frost. And the end of the poem is like it talks about like anyway, the end of the poem leaves you with this sense of like a season or something coming to an end and something passing. And I think it goes, I'm hopefully not gonna butcher this, but he knows in singing not to sing. The question that he frames in all but words is what to make of a diminished thing. And so it leaves you with this sense of like the whole poem is just a incredible poem. It's Robert Frost, and then it leaves you with this sense of he's not asking the question. It's a ends with a period, but it makes you ask the question yourself. It's like what to make of a diminished thing, like something that's past, something that's fading away, some season that's changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're left reflecting on that, and I think that reflection can be a good thing because it's making you think of something. Man, what do I make of that? Was it good? Was it bad? What do I want future things to be like? Am I diminishing? Well, it's so, and I don't think those questions are bad things. When they're framed, like though you read the poem itself, it's a wonderful poem to read. It doesn't leave you like angry or really in this negative funk, but it does leave you a little bit reflective. And I think that was the goal of it. And poetry that does that, I mean that's a win. If it makes you start like considering something bigger than yourself, I think that's a win.
Especially we can end something in a period and then leads you asking the question.
Yeah, that's
because then that leads you to answering said question, or at least on the journey to.
Yeah,
That's brilliant to end something with a period that ends up leaving someone as a question. That has to have some skill behind that to do that.
It for it to be effective, it does. Yeah, Robert Frost was skilled. That is for sure.
I don't think I have very few literatures or poets have I come across that can do that.
Yeah, it's I think there's more out there, but maybe one day they'll find the guts to publish their work.
Yeah, and well, especially if it can lead you to self-reflection. I mean, that's one thing is that sometimes people do is avoid asking themselves the hard questions.
Yeah.
And then because sometimes people are like lost, like, what do I do next?
Yeah, yeah. And so I would want to add this, I think a goal of self-reflection, you wouldn't want it to get, because that can go one of two ways, right? Self-reflection of that gets super, super focused on self. I don't think that's healthy. But then like self-reflection that gets focused on like how can I make a difference? How can I serve others? That opens you up for like what God could be doing in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a win. That's the kind of self-reflection I hope my poetry, like the self-reflection that stirs the eternity that's been set in people's heart. That's what I want to happen, even if it's the most small, minuscule way. And I think some of the best poems do that. They'll take William Carlos Williams, all depends on a red wheelbarrow. It's the most like this image of a red wheelbarrow, but he just uses just enough right words where you read that and you're like, man, there's such a bigger picture here. Like there's so much that this wheelbarrow has been used with and does, so it ties people to something bigger using something very, very small.
Well, I mean, that's where you just have to use your gifts and talents for.
That's true.
Helping to inspire people to, one, to know that for you to instill that belief in others, and then two, helping them on their own journey of using their gifts and talents to be innovative. As you mentioned before, how you define it is, taking something that's been known and just redefining it and reusing it for today's standards. And I mean, how many times do we look back at things that have been said thousands of years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, and they still hold true? That's what we call it.
Yeah. Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, that's true. There is nothing. I mean, even that poem in Psalms where it's like, everything's kind of hopeless and, everything gets repeated. It's like nothing new. And it's always, hard and strife, and trying to look at the brighter side of, okay, that's true. And it's just sometimes just a fact of life. It's suffering. It's hard. And that's why it's so important to be aware of who's around you and your influences, and just living out a mission for your life and a purpose for your life. And obviously for you, your purpose is to that God's given you the abilities and the talents to write and think creatively. I'm sure he's helping you to help other people to be innovative and to, break cycles, like how you broke a cycle that your kids would never know what it's like to grow up in a childhood that you grew up in.
Yeah. Yeah, that is man, that's a blessing getting to do that. Being a dad, my family is my favorite people. Being a dad is my favorite calling that I get to be, man. It's a partnership with my wife. Um, you know, and just getting to raise our kids together, and I love it. It's wonderful.
I was gonna say, it's only two times I see you smile that bright. When you talking about your kids, or you talking about your poetry?
Yeah, so
It's
it's
authentic, and it's true.
I love poems, and I love my children, and maybe I'll write a kids poetry book one day for them. We'll see.
Are your kids at all interested in poetry at all?
Yeah, a little bit actually. So my oldest, and some of this, my wife homeschools, so we teach them here's this, that, and they've learned a little bit about, hey, here's poetry just as introduced as a concept. And then one day, a couple months ago, she decided she just wanted to write a song, and it was a poem. She called it a song, but it wasn't like there was no music to it. It's just like lyrics, and it was a little poem. And I was like, oh my goodness, my little girl just wrote a little poem, and it was actually really. So I talk about this deep thing, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it was basically something along the lines of, every day I want to dance, and I will be happy if you dance with me too, or something like that. And that's not it, but that's the general concept, right?
Right.
Now this is a kid.
That's smart for a 6-year-old. That's smart.
But that's what I mean. Like, you're articulating things in poetry that you otherwise wouldn't know how to put into words. And what she's saying there is like, every day is like, I enjoy life and all this, but it's so much better when you live life with me. And so writing that poem to her daddy and her family, that is, I mean, that's what I mean, like, in the eternity that's sit there, like there's something deeper, like that's coming out, that's in us even when we're kids and we don't know it. And if she hadn't written that little poetic blurb, I don't think she would have known how to articulate something like that.
Kid.
Thank you. Yeah, I think she's pretty smart too.
No, it's amazing how just the arts do that, right? How sometimes it takes such few words to really describe a big concept.
Yeah.
Of wanting to do life with you, wanting to be there with you, and dance and or sing or what have you, and just be part of your life.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
good, man.
So I guess what's nice about getting a little bit older, you get to see all the sentiments and things in life, and like how much deeper meanings things have, and how much you're really working together with your wife and everything to raise kids who one day will really help out a lot of people. And it's all because it's all such with a decision of wanting to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a blessing.
So what is something that you would like to speak to somebody today, Paul? Like it's like, if someone's like going through what you're going through, how would you like to help them and support them?
There's, I was looking over what you sent me before.
Mm-hmm.
You shared, different things we might end up talking about. I was trying to think, what's something I've gone through, like something I had to overcome in life. And I'm like, well, which part? I mean, it's like a million different things I could pick, it feels like. And I think the biggest piece of advice of all of it, whatever your situation, this is going to be basic, but it is consistency and it's confidence. And consistency is, I call consistency lowercase king. Jesus is uppercase king, so capital king. So consistency is lowercase king, and consistency wins. Now you got to be doing the right things with it, and that's where confidence comes into play. And you keep be teachable. If you're consistent in attempting something, as long as you can adapt and learn to grow, of course, right? So there's there's all the caveats. So like consistency and confidence. Consistency for the development and the growth, and confidence for the part relationships, because you need those, and confidence does feed into that, and part for your own, like, believing in yourself, believing in who God made you to be. And I think they fuel each other. It's gonna be really hard to be consistent if you're not confident in that, and it's gonna be really hard to be confident if you're not consistent. Like you kind of have to have both, right? Which, the chicken or egg, which came first? It's
Right.
probably, I don't know which one does come first. Probably either one, but you need both of them to continue on. And so if you have something that you're going through, whether it's family or health issue, or whatever it is, you be consistent in just be consistent in it. Be consistent in what you're doing to overcome, to find out next step, but also be confident. And that confident comes from, this was told me years ago. It comes from Latin confido, which means with faith, and that's what you believe. And so confidence is what you believe, and you got to believe in yourself. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean that in you are created in the image of the Almighty, and God put talents in you. It's just like Gideon. When Gideon was in the hiding, this guy in the Old Testament was, Israel was being oppressed and they were going through it. He was hiding in some kind of wheat thing, like making wine or something. And God appears to him and calls him a mighty warrior. The first thing he spoke to him was he called him a mighty warrior, which suggests that you already have these warrior talents in you. And then later, he's like, he tells Gideon to go in the strength that you have, and I'll be with you. So the strength that you have, that's the talents you have. So be confident in the talents that you have and that you were born with and that you were able to do. Be confident in those things. And God can be with you too if you choose that. But be confident in that, and to be consistent. Like if you're going in something, you're not just going to take a step and stop, right? You're going to go in the strength that God's given you. You're going to go in the strength that you have. You are going to be consistent in that. So that's when I was in high school. When I went I started when I was in high school. I did track and field, right? And my senior year, I ended up winning 400-meter dash state. I was a state champion.
Wow.
400-meter dash on an injury. I ran faster than I've ever run before, on an injured leg that I limped on until that August. And it was complete, just crazy miracle I was even able to compete. But that whole season, my senior year, I had this crazy idea that I am going to win state because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so it's this confidence, but then it also feels this consistency of I'm going to train as hard as I can, as best as I can throughout the entire season. And the beginning of the season, like my time was not even like I would had no hope of making the state.
Oh, wow.
But I just kept getting better because I kept being consistent, and I was being confident, and that was feeling that like whatever happens, I'm going to give it my all. And I remember that last race at state, the last 100 meters, because I kind of turned it on the back curve, and that last 100 meters, a 400-meter dash is one lap around the track. And it felt like micro tears. I could feel the micro tears in my arms. I'm just like moving as fast as I could and crossed the finish line. And it was like this moment of like, I knew it was going to happen all along and grateful for it. But it was the confidence and consistency of that belief. It's what got me there. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I had zero doubt in my mind that was going to happen. It made no sense. It was kind of crazy to consider. But it overcame an injury even and allowed me to win and do something I knew I was called and supposed to do. And I think that same mentality has carried over in so many other areas of life. Another one, growing up in a negative environment, this may help some of your people that you help. Growing up in a negative environment and that's not healthy, a lot of times you learn a lot of your social skills when you're young from the environment you're in. So I'm not a believer that, I don't think we're victims. We don't need to live in victimhood. It's not my fault. I grew up in this environment. But at the same time, excuse me, the environment you grow up in does affect like where you start. So your starting point's different. And all throughout my 20s, it's like I was playing catch up when it came to people skills and self-awareness and all that, to get to where my peers were, because I started so far. I didn't have the development when I was younger. And developing people skills is some of the hardest stuff you can do, in my opinion, because it demands a lot of humility and a lot of being willing to be teachable and being consistent in it. But I was confident that like whatever happens, I'm going to grow these things because I want to be able to be successful. I want to have good people skills. I want to be effective, get married and all that stuff. And it allowed me to overcome that starting point, being far behind where a lot of people that were my age had started. So that's something else that consistency and confidence overcame. But that's what I mean. It can look at you need those two things, even in different environments, different contexts. You need them. Everything else, you may get tailored specific to what you're going through, but that's the two underlying character values about yourself I think that you got to have.
Well,
right?
Have consistency and confidence. Couldn't say it better myself. So I just want to thank you, Paul, for coming on the podcast and everything. And guys, all of Paul's social medias, his poetry, everything is going to be in the comments below. So go check them out. And this call to action is start being consistent in life and having a confidence. So name one thing that you can do today that either you're striving towards confidence, and so that way you can take that one step closer to who do you want to become in life. And Paul, he's a good guy to follow on X. He's a good guy to start seeing more of your poetry though on X, man. I know you posted this Substack.
I post links every once in a while. Yeah, it's posting poetry on X. I'm actually thinking about adding some to some articles. We'll see how that goes.
Awesome. Well, if you do, I would love to read some just to get some more insight into you. And if you ever publish a book, maybe we can come, invite you back on, because we're always bringing people back on who've been on the podcast. So that way we can keep an update with them, let the audience know. And if you got value of this, like, share, subscribe. And so that way we can continue to bring on amazing people like Paul.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
If you need a group for men, we have a men's Lifeline Academy Discord group that meets 7:30 p.m. EST. We'd love to have you, so we can always chat about it. It is a paid subscription, and if you're ready to improve your life, let us know in the comments below. Paul, I hope you have a blessed day, my friend.
Thank you, Zach. You too.